In 2014, a catering company executive from St. Petersburg sat across from the president of Russia at a state dinner on the Neva River. His name was Yevgeny Prigozhin. He was not a general. He was not a diplomat. He had spent 9 years in a Soviet prison for robbery and fraud. He had reinvented himself selling hot dogs, then running restaurants, then winning government contracts to feed the Russian military, Russian school children, Russian state institutions. His company, Concord Catering, made him a billionaire. He was also running something else. On May 1st, 2014, weeks after the annexation of Crimea, Prigozhin founded the Wagner Group. The name came from his operational partner, Dmitry Utkin, a former Spetsnaz officer and GRU military intelligence veteran whose call sign was Wagner. Utkin had developed a documented fascination with Third Reich history. Waffen-SS insignia was tattooed on his body. Together, they built a private army that Russian law technically prohibited. Private military companies are illegal in Russia. Wagner existed in a legal gray zone by design. It used GRU infrastructure. It drew on Russian state resources. It was funded, as Putin himself later confirmed, entirely from the Russian federal budget. The Kremlin maintained plausible deniability. Wagner maintained plausible distance. The arrangement was identical in structure to every model this series has examined. A private force conducting what states cannot officially admit to conducting. The first deployment was Ukraine. The second was Syria. In Syria, they discovered the model that would define the next decade. In 2015, Wagner forces arrived in Syria. They were not there to defend Assad. They were there to recapture oil fields. The arrangement was documented. A Wagner-linked company called Overthrow had a written agreement with the Assad government. For every oil or gas field recovered from ISIS control, Overthrow would receive 25% of production revenues. Not a fee, a share, permanent, ongoing. This was the model. Western private military companies charged per operator per day. Wagner charged in perpetuity. The extraction model. Wagner fighters stormed ISIS positions and cleared the ancient city of Palmyra. Then they stepped back, while Syrian government forces walked in for the cameras. Wagner's contribution was erased from the official record. Officially, they were never there. The oil revenue continued. In 2018, Wagner carried the model to Central Africa. The Central African Republic had a president struggling to survive. Rebel groups controlled most of the country. The national military had almost no functional capacity. President Faustin-Archange Touadéra sent a delegation to Moscow. Wagner arrived as instructors, then as a presidential bodyguard, then as a de facto parallel army. In exchange, a series of companies was incorporated in-country. Lobay Invest, Midas Resources, Diamville. They were granted preferential mining rights across the country, including the Ndasima gold mine north of Bambari, estimated to hold over $1 billion in gold reserves. The Malian junta, when it came, paid $10 million a month in cash. But in the Central African Republic, Wagner was not paid in cash. It was paid in the country. In February 2022, Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Wagner returned. By the summer of 2022, the offensive had stalled. Regular Russian military units were suffering catastrophic losses. Prigozhin offered a solution. He walked into Russian prisons. His pitch was direct. You will either die in prison or you will die in the war. At least this way, you die with a weapon in your hand, and Russia will be grateful. Approximately 50,000 inmates accepted. They were given 6 months of frontline service in exchange for a presidential pardon. 1 in 3 of those who went to Bakhmut did not return. The Battle of Bakhmut lasted 327 days, July 2022 to May 20th, 2023. It was the longest and bloodiest battle of the full-scale war. Wagner was the primary assault force. The tactic was human wave attacks, sending consecutive waves of fighters, many of them recently released prisoners, directly into fortified Ukrainian defensive lines. A joint investigation by Media Zona and BBC Russia using internal compensation records confirmed 19,547 Wagner fighters died at Bakhmut. 17,175 of them were recruited from Russian prisons. On May 20th, 2023, Prigozhin declared victory. He filmed himself in front of the bodies of recently killed Wagner fighters and posted the recording publicly. He was screaming at Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of Staff Valery Gerasimov. He described a 70% ammunition shortage. He said the shortfall was deliberate. He said it was an attempt to destroy the Wagner Group. Russia had just won its most significant territorial battle of the war. The man who won it was publicly accusing the Russian military of trying to kill his own men. Before Bakhmut, before the mutiny, there was a night in Syria that Russia has never officially acknowledged. February 7th, 2018, Kasham village, Deir ez-Zor Governorate, eastern bank of the Euphrates River, the Conoco natural gas fields. Approximately 500 pro-government forces, Syrian troops, and a significant contingent of Wagner mercenaries crossed the Euphrates and attacked a position held by United States Special Operations Forces and their Syrian Democratic Forces allies. They crossed a line they had been explicitly warned not to cross. The American response lasted 3 hours. AC-130 gunships, F-22 Raptors, F-15E Strike Eagles, Apache attack helicopters, B-52 bombers, United States casualties, 0. Wagner and pro-government casualties, between 100 and 300 Russian nationals killed. Some assessments place the number higher. It remains the most lethal direct engagement between American and Russian-linked forces since the Cold War. The Kremlin said nothing. The Ministry of Defense acknowledged only a small number of deaths, privately, without statement. No official announcement was made. No state funerals were held. No honors were awarded. Families of dead mercenaries received no official notification, no compensation, no acknowledgement that their relatives had died in the service of Russian foreign policy. The bodies of some fighters were never returned. The oil fields on the eastern bank of the Euphrates remained under American and SDF control. The incident was absorbed into silence. Wagner continued operating. The model continued expanding. The dead remained uncounted. On the evening of June 23, 2023, Prigozhin posted an audio message. He said the Russian military had struck his fighters. He called it betrayal. He announced a march of justice. Wagner forces crossed from Ukraine into Russia. Within hours, the most powerful private military force in the world was moving through Russian cities. Wagner seized the southern military district headquarters in Rostov-on-Don. Prigozhin was photographed sitting in the regional military commander's office. Russian citizens filmed the armored columns on their phones. Some cheered. Columns moved north through Voronezh, through Lipetsk, through Tula. Wagner shot down Russian military aircraft, helicopters, and an Il-22M airborne command post. 13 Russian airmen died. The Russian military, which had spent 16 months failing to capture Ukrainian cities, offered almost no resistance as Wagner's armored columns drove toward Moscow. At approximately 200 kilometers from the capital, Prigozhin halted. A deal had been brokered by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. Prigozhin would go to Belarus, criminal charges would be dropped, Wagner fighters would be absorbed into the Russian Ministry of Defense or discharged. Putin called it treason in a national address, then permitted Prigozhin to board a plane to Minsk. For 24 hours, the largest nuclear arsenal on Earth was governed by a state that could not stop an armored column from driving toward its own capital. The man who had led the column understood exactly what the Kremlin's restraint meant. He had been given a clock. On August 23, 2023, exactly 2 months after the mutiny, Yevgeny Prigozhin boarded an Embraer Legacy 600 business jet at Sheremetyevo Airport in Moscow. His destination was St. Petersburg. The aircraft did not arrive. It came down near the village of Kuzhenkino in Tver Oblast, 100 kilometers north of Moscow. All 10 people on board were killed, among them Prigozhin, Dmitry Utkin, 5 other senior Wagner commanders. Ground footage showed the aircraft breaking apart in the air before impact. Russia conducted an investigation. It produced no public findings. No charges were filed. No suspects were named. Putin offered condolences. He called Prigozhin a talented businessman who had made serious mistakes in life. He said nothing further. Wagner was restructured. The African operations were rebranded Africa Corps and placed under direct Russian Ministry of Defense command. The resource extraction continued. The regime protection model continued. The mining companies continued. Disinformation operations in the Sahel continued. As of 2026, Africa Corps operates in the Central African Republic, Niger, Burkina Faso, Libya, and Sudan. The Indasima gold mine remains under Russian control. The governments of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have withdrawn from the regional bloc ECOWAS and formed the Alliance of Sahel States, explicitly anti-Western, explicitly aligned with Moscow. Prigozhin's name no longer appears on documents. Utkin's call sign is no longer used. The name Wagner appears less frequently in official channels. The operations continue. The message sent by a plane falling from the sky over Tver Oblast was understood by every private military contractor, every government that had sheltered one, and every person who had ever believed that a private army could challenge the state that created it. Some armies answer to a flag, some answer to a contract. This one learned what happens when it answers back.